So far, we have covered honesty and acceptance, and today it is time to shift things up a gear into loyalty, the state of being that reveals which habits, patterns, and beliefs you are faithful to and how they externally materialize in your reality. This episode is part 3 of 4, where I am breaking down, expanding, and contextualizing each stage of my HALT theory. The Grand Rising experience exists to help you transform your pain into power and purpose, and HALT is how I've been guided to navigate this terrain with you. If you want a little background on HALT, what it means and why I use it, I have linked previous episodes in the show notes, including the first 2 episodes of this series, which are honesty and acceptance, which I recommend starting with if you haven't already listened to them. My goal with this HALT series is to bring you bite-sized and digestible overviews that will inspire you to get curious, begin to honestly self-evaluate, and then take inspired action towards claiming your sovereign wealth. Before I get into it, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Grand Rising experience wherever you are listening. If you can, please give it a 5-star rating and review, and you can also click the Ask Me Anything link in the show notes to leave a comment or question about anything you've heard in this episode. As always, thank you so much for being here. I love you. Let's dive in. Self-loyalty is the expression of the integrity of your will. It's where the vitality of your loyalty becomes undeniably tethered to your ability to honestly evaluate and accept the results of where you consistently direct your energy and attention without diminishing your intrinsic self-worth. Often loyalty is used externally and in opposition to betrayal, but I would like to challenge that loyalty is actually a state of being that exists along the spectrum of self-worth. In its highest expression, self-loyalty is the embodiment of your sovereignty, a reflection of your capacity to hear your intuition and faithfully trust its guidance. When repressed, it presents as self-betrayal, a magnification of the self-deception and denial that distorts your self-perceptions and binds you to your suffering. Self-loyalty also represents consistency. What thoughts, words, and actions do you repeat? The focus of your consistency and the value of what it creates in your reality determines if you are honoring your sovereignty or reinforcing your suffering, which is ultimately a reflection of what you believe you deserve. In this episode, I'm going to weave together particular aspects of self-worth, intuition, and will that I feel are paramount to creating and holding the boundaries, grit, patience, and perseverance that reinforce your values so that you can remember and trust that you know how to stand in those values whenever you feel the earth shake beneath you. Who taught you how to measure your worth, and against what factors has your personal evaluation been established? Now, the answer to this question will continue to evolve the deeper you recognize and transmute your shadow, because much of your distorted self-perception, be it overly inflated or deflated, is going to reflect your ancestry, the culture and circumstance you were born and raised in, paired with the degree of inner work and remembrance you've already committed yourself to. Now, notice I'm saying remember, not learn. And this is because accessing your intrinsic self-worth is an unlayering and deconditioning of all the patterns, habits, beliefs, and ideas that taught you that you lack value. You do not need to learn your worth from an external source. It must be remembered. Because at your core, you are a creator. Nothing in your personal reality can exist without your consistent attention. The act of appreciating your self-worth, and not just admiration or gratitude for it, but actually increasing its value, requires that you remember how to consciously tap into and trust the knowing that you possess intrinsic value before valuing your worth concurrent to the perceptions, perspectives, and projections of others. It is heavily influenced by how honest and accepting you can be of the metaphysical and physical debts and credits you've accumulated along the path that you've traveled to this now moment. It's through this process that you get to choose if you are a commodity or a creator. Are you attaching your value to the reaction of your shareholders, or establishing value based on your ability to clear your debt through honesty and acceptance, and then build equity via loyalty and trust? Are you willing to own every inch of your life, good, bad, or indifferent, and use it to create a priceless masterpiece? Do you have the courage to establish boundaries with others and yourself to become someone you've never met before? Can you value your intuitive voice over who they say you are and free yourself from the habits, patterns, and beliefs that are keeping you sick, stuck, and spiritually broke? Are you ready to accept the consistency you've lived every day of your life and transmute it into wealth? Going back to the opening of this section on self-worth, I'd like to invite you to reflect on who taught you how to measure your worth and what did they value? Are you able to map common threads of belief throughout your family lineage that reinforce the metrics you were modeled? Can you identify any particular words associated with value that have transcended generations, that have maintained these beliefs, and how do they make you feel when you say or hear them? Intuition. Intuition is the tuning fork your will and self-worth is constantly trying to harmonize with. When you attempt to override resonance with logic, you begin to create distrust and therefore disharmony and disease. And this is where the mind thinks it knows better than how the energy feels and what it's signaling. Do you follow and trust what feels true, or submit to what looks and sounds true? And I ask this because truth is a feeling, which is why your ability to constantly follow your curiosity will always triumph over how diligently you can adhere to external facts and methods. In my opinion, and in my experience, adherence creates interference. It's a less stigmatized version of the word compliance, but nonetheless, adherence requires discipline and devotion. And with this, you typically see results through consistent effort, which can look and feel really good. But when adherence creates a systematized way of being, the world can consciously and subconsciously begin to get filtered through what you've been taught and not always what you know. And here's where intuition can get suppressed and bypassed if your intuitive nudges end up in conflict with what you've been taught. It's in this space where faith can get traded for certainty of outcome, especially if your self-worth or feelings of belonging become threatened should your faith require that you move against the grain. This is why we must strengthen our intuition and trust the impulses that come from within that cannot always be rationalized in the external. Because when you follow your intuitive guidance and allow your curiosity to repeatedly guide you into the spaces and places that need your attention, this is how you begin to build loyalty and trust from within. And as your intuition becomes a reliable internal filter and trusted navigational beacon that allows you to take right action that is in alignment with your morals, values, and ethics, it becomes very hard to self-betray. Instead of seeking answers externally, you now begin to trust the answers that are trying to get your attention from within. And only once you start to faithfully and consistently trust yourself can you confidently build trust outside of yourself. The conversation of intuition can go in many different directions and much deeper than what I've allowed for in this particular episode. But I do have a reflection question for you based on what we've discussed today. So when navigating life's decisions, do you prioritize trusting and following the intuitive signals from within, even when they conflict with external teachings? Or do you tend to prioritize adherence to learned principles and seek external validation? How do these choices ultimately impact your sense of self-worth? And in what ways can strengthening your intuition contribute to building internal trust and better alignment with your values? The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for our past act or word because the eyes of others have no data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. To be great is to be misunderstood. This is a quote from Self-Reliance, an essay by Ralph Waldo Emerson published in 1841. Will is your birthright. You have been created with the ability to choose your intent. Your ability to choose well is tethered to what you believe you deserve and why. Ultimately, how you exercise your will establishes your integrity based on the frequency of your consistency. Are you attuned to your intuition and inherent value, or the perceptions, perspectives, and projections of others? Are you consistently creating from what feels true or what looks and sounds true? Can you own and claim what gets revealed within these questions without condemning yourself? What I've noticed is that as you move through this HALT theory, negotiating what is considered good or bad, right or wrong, true or untrue, shifts from being a rational and unconscious exercise to an embodied conscious experience. Physiological responses become undeniable indications of your inner and outer alignment. Your body now becomes the roadmap into your state of being. What you're covering up and avoiding becomes harder to ignore when you know that your consistent attention is tethered to your will, that what you are not changing, you are choosing. Because once you know that you have the ability to change, you now get to decide if you want to or not. Because your consistency is always guaranteed. That is your will. How you wield it, however, determines if your thoughts, words, and actions are racking up your debts or increasing your credits. Are you committed to upholding the deceptions and denials that betray your intuition and interfere with the valuation of your worth? Or are you faithfully creating from your remembrance of the truth of who you are? So for my final invitation, I'd like you to reflect on how consciously aligned you are with your inherent worth and intuition in the choices that you make. And if you're willing to examine if your actions reflect a commitment to the truth of who you are, or if they perpetuate deceptions and denials that betray your intuition and interfere with your self-valuation. When you choose to get radically honest about your degree of self-deception, you allow self-awareness to show you where you are not being who you claim to be, and self-responsibility and accountability to show you where you need to begin to take charge and ownership over how you got to this present moment. Only then can you begin to transmute denial into acceptance by forgiving yourself for doing the best you could with the tools you had, which shifts your self-perception and cultivates the resilience which allows your truths to evolve and change as you evolve and change. When you consistently work to implement and embody these principles, you fundamentally anchor into your worth, which minimizes the need for external validation, instinctively creating boundaries that protects the intuitive guidance which allows you to create the loyalty within that ultimately fosters self-trust. I know I just scratched the surface on incredibly deep and nuanced topics, but if you found this helpful, please like this episode, share it, and click on the Ask Me Anything link in the show notes, where you can talk about your relationship with self-loyalty and expand on what was discussed. And in the next episode, which is also the final installment of this series and the pinnacle of the HALT pyramid, we will be diving into self-trust. This is an exciting one for me because not only is it the culmination point of the internal work, but it strongly reflects how global systems and structures were created from the inside out in ways you may have never seen before. Until then, thank you so much for being here. I love you.